could change, and they'd be like, Suge's outside, and everybody be like, yeah. What do you want?
If you're a hip-hop fan, I'm pretty sure you've heard the infamous story about 50 Cent and Suge Knight. I'm also very sure that you guys are aware of how Knight undoubtedly made many musicians, producers, and business people shudder. But 50 Cent, a rising star at the time, dared to challenge Suge Knight without fear. Most people who saw the confrontation called it nothing short of a standoff, and yet 50 Cent didn't cower, but instead stood his ground and even challenged the man everyone in the industry was afraid of. So what did 50 have that even Suge had to back off and do something he had never done before? Let's find out. Hugh Suge Knight Jr. was born in Compton, California on April 19, 1965. Because he is bigger than most of his peers, Suge has had the moniker Suge Bear since he was a young child. His large frame is also the reason he started playing football and track and field. When he entered university, Suge played football for a few seasons before beginning a brief career as a nightclub bodyguard in Los Angeles. His behavior also changed as a result of his shift in profession. We all know how the nightlife in Los Angeles can get a little crazy, so Suge became deeply immersed in the chaotic life in Los Angeles. This quickly shaped his character, and not in a positive way. While working as Bobby Brown's bodyguard, he also became familiar with the music industry. Knight made huge movements to brush shoulders with people who make music, signed record deals for millions of dollars, and started making a name for himself. Suge himself would eventually get a piece of the action. It was only a question of time. Things changed when the realization hit Suge big time. After he understood that he could also make a lot more money by using his huge physique to intimidate and influence other people, he went ahead and decided to become a manager and build a company. Unbelievably, Suge was able to secure some of the most well-known gangster rappers, including Dr. Dre, Snoop Dogg, and the legendary Tupac. Suge was at the perfect location and moment to approach all these artists on death row. Some even said it was fate and timing working together when Suge found himself in the right place at the right moment and attracted these awesome rappers. Aside from timing, he was so successful as a manager and label co-founder because he didn't give a damn about the methods employed to achieve his goals. This sets him apart from the rest of the industry. With that attitude, he immediately grew very powerful and influential in the LA rap scene. As expected, Knight made a buzz for his wayward ways because of his cruel and violent way of handling things. And what began with him cutting off his ex-girlfriend's hair in front of her mother's house quickly developed into him sending threats to Vanilla Ice. If you think this is bad enough, think again. After doing those terrible things, Knight didn't stop and eventually became actively implicated in a homicide after framing others for murder. Yet even though Suge Knight was a known mobster without a shred of humanity or respect, there was one person who never budged. While Knight maintained tight control over the West Coast music industry, an artist from the East Coast emerged who was unlike any other. So, as Dr. Dre saw where Suge's bullying tactics were leading, he decided to give up his 50% ownership stake in Death Row Records and start over. He left everything that was connected to Knight and started his label from scratch. This is how Aftermath Records was born. Little did he know this decision would change rap history. Eminem was the first artist signed to Dr. Dre's label. Then, on M's advice, Dre signed the up-and-coming New York artist, which was 50 Cent. Curtis James Jackson, better known as 50 Cent, was raised in a South Jamaican section of Queens and had a difficult upbringing. From a young age, 50 knows that the world is a harsh place and the only way to survive is to be tough and stronger than anyone else. This is why he started making a living by peddling drugs at the age of 12 and has battled to find a place since he was a little child. It was also then that young 50 Cent learned to defend himself to overcome anything life threw at him. Thankfully, even though his life was never the best, music was one thing that helped him persevere even in the most trying circumstances. Because of this, 50 began rapping at a very young age, but it was not until 1996 that he started recording his music. From the first moment he listened to Jam Master Jay and Run DMC, 50 never looked back and focused on his music. He was fully aware of his desire to work in the music industry, and Eminem was wise to notice his hustle. After listening to 50's Guess Who's Back CD, Eminem spoke with Dre and told him about the tremendous artistic potential he saw in 50. Thankfully, Dre listened to M, and before you knew it, 50 had been signed to Aftermath. At that point, both 50 and Suge Knight started to get tangled in a mess no one saw coming. Right after he signed with Aftermath Records, 50's life changed. Why? Well, by signing a contract with Dre and M, 50 could now be considered one of the big boys. He was gradually turning into a hip-hop legend, and that meant a lot of responsibility. You know, the degree of responsibility that transforms you into a whole different person. At that time, Suge had just been released from prison, and he finally got around to repairing the harm done to his record label. But there's a catch. He had no idea that Dr. Dre, who was once under his control, would become one of his biggest competitors. On top of that, his label just recently signed 50 Cent, who was undeniably one of the best rappers during that era. Suge Knight understood that. For his Death Row Records to achieve success, he would need to establish control. It was inevitable that he would run into 50 Cent, and just like that, their first meeting happened in 2002. 50 was shooting one of his famous videos at that time. Everyone was having a great time until things got pretty messy. It was when an audience member shouted that Suge was there, and it was one big fiasco after that. Not to mention how Suge allegedly had 30 people with him when he barged in uninvited to the filming site. Now that's not how you enter a place without prior notice. It was only natural that everyone from 50's crew scrambled to their feet and left, especially when a huge billionaire came barging in to obviously make a statement, but 50 didn't budge. Even D12 rapper Bizarre was scared when it happened, recalling what he called a standoff.
I was there when Suge Knight came to the video shoot, in the club video.
I remember that. I heard about that.
Yeah, like niggas was.
I never heard about that.
He came with the Mexicans.
I heard he put up.
Yeah, I know about it. He came with the 50 Mexicans, and M was out there. M didn't back down. They said niggas came outside.
Bizarre explained what he felt when he saw Suge walk in with his entourage. It was like a standoff, Bizarre said. I know it sounds like an effing made-up movie, but it's really true. We was shooting the In Da Club video and somebody said Suge Knight here. And I was at the bar, gang was there, and they stopped and Suge came in with 30 Mexicans. Like you said, which is weird. And I just remember 50 was like, "What's up, man? What you wanna do?" Suge Knight didn't respond to him in any way. He simply lifted his hand to tell his group to vacate the area, and that was it.
Club scene, and he stopped, and Suge came in with 30 Mexicans, like you said, which is weird, you know what I'm saying?
He always wrong with the Mexicans.
You know what I'm saying? And I just remember Smurf and 50 was like, "What's up, man? What you want to do?"
Bang him.
Yeah, Bang was like, what you want to do?
Suge probably anticipated hearing 50 Cent offer praise or plead for compassion, but the response he received was very different. 50 Cent showed no fear toward the menacing group that was right in front of him despite being clearly outnumbered and in danger. Maybe it was because he was so used to such displays of power when he was a child. He grew up in a very dangerous and challenging part of the world, and seeing a big guy with 30 other people strutting their way toward him was nothing. That's why he was one of the few people who never feared Suge Knight. As the pressure hit him, he resisted giving in. At that very time, Suge Knight was fully aware of the fact that attacking 50 would not further his cause. Since the operation was a failure, he and his crew departed, and 50 went on to create one of the most iconic rap videos ever. That's turning adversity in his favor. Nobody is certain as to why Suge showed up that day. He was presumably attempting to frighten 50 or send a message by telling him that if he wanted to succeed in the game, he would have to compete against him. No one knows, but one thing is for sure, he didn't expect to walk out of that place without any sort of reaction from 50 Cent. Unfortunately for him, a guy would not tremble in his presence, and he learns that information the hard way. How about you? Why do you think 50 Cent was never afraid of Suge Knight? Let us know below and we'll see you in the next video.